Forgive me, this may be a more than usual rambling and incoherent talk. Those of you who want to sign off now, ciao. You don't have to stick around. Um, but I have a whole laundry list of stuff that's kind of percolating without an exact organizational pattern, which is often what I'm given when I speak after class. So even the beginning point is tricky, but it has a lot to do with this week, and it has a lot to do with so many things happening in, quote, my life, in some ways, our lives, and in some ways, the life of the world. So if this speaks to you, great. And if it doesn't speak to you, as I pretty much say on a weekly basis, find someone who speaks to you. But this has been so fascinating. This week started out kind of Monday-ish, and uh, there were some contractors coming to work on our house to finish off some of the stuff with the elevator that started in September. They're still trying to get it done. The elevator's working, everything's fine, but there's a lot of outside stuff that needs to get taken care of. And I was asked to do a interview for a French European re-release of Jacob's Ladder on Blue Tube, and they wanted me to talk about the my relationship to the film, which is 35 years ago. So I actually had to go back and read my own book to remember what I did and who were the players and all of that. And I did that. And the crew came and they were setting up huge lights and cameras and doing all this stuff in my house. And I told the contractor the recording is going to be from 1 to 2. So that's the only time I can't have workers outside. We're about to start shooting, and it's really kind of an interesting dynamic. I mean, the cameraman was trying to find every angle and ways to do this. And just as we were about to start shooting, the crew arrives to start working out right outside. And I had to say, whoa, the 1 hour I told you in the entire week that was not available is why did you pick that? And they were apologetic and left, not to come back for the whole week, which was its own situation. But I did this interview, and it was really wonderful and reawakening on so many levels because it took me back on a journey I haven't been on and sort of referenced a lot. And one of the questions the interviewer asked me, and they were all French and wonderful, wonderful people, but he asked, where does the inspiration come from? Which is a really interesting line, of course. And I know that it's a question a lot of writers have. Where's the inspiration? Where does this thing flood into you? And those of you who know my story, I'm not going to go into the largeness of it because there were some powerful moments that set me off as a writer. But when I'm writing, I told him I have a process, which is I do rewriting in the morning because it's kind of already informed by what I did the day before. And then I have to generate new stuff. And I go, okay. And this is what I've always done. I finish my writing and I take a nap. And I lie there and I just go, I don't know what I do, but I go there and somewhere within a period of time, what I'm supposed to write next floods into the system. And I get up and I go to my computer or the old days, the typewriter, and I start working. It's just inspiration flooding in. It's not cognitive. I don't have to sit and spend, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Perhaps if I'm struggling with things, I'll go for a walk. But this is very much something arrives to tell me what now. And it, in a way, created a career for me, a career inspired by this unnameable thing that comes through the system and points in a direction. For the last 10 years, I haven't written anything, really. And I have it when I teach, which is a whole other dynamic. But inspiration of that kind just doesn't happen so much. But as I mentioned last week, my brother sent me a copy of a script I wrote, my first script when I was 15, based on a Ray Bradbury story of the last day, the last night of the world, which after this interview with the people from France, I went up to my office and I read it. And I was like overwhelmed by the story. And I could totally understand why it impacted me as a 15-year-old. And then the amazement of it suddenly resurfacing, with my not even remembering having written it. But then I read it, and I was so flooded with emotion. And it's such a simple story. The vague outline of it, and you can find it online, 4 pages long, is a man who has a dream that this is going to be the last night of the world. And he's standing in his office, and another guy down the way is looking out the window, and he walks over to him. And all of a sudden, the other guy says, "You won't believe I had this amazing dream last night." And they suddenly realize, as does everybody everywhere, that they've all had the same dream. And it's going to be the last night of the world. And this guy goes home, and his wife has had the dream, and his two daughters. And they're all like, is this real? Is this true? What can it be? But the collective nature of the shared experience that somehow all of this will be coming to an end and everybody knows it. And they try to understand, I guess, what to do, but it's not cognitive. What they do is they make dinner, they eat dinner, they wash the dishes, they're heading off to bed, and his wife says, "I think we should wash the dishes again." And they do, and they go to bed. End of story. So I read this, I read my script, and which is very much that story translated by me typing. And then I took a nap, and I was suddenly awakened by a flood of inspiration about this movie I talked about last week. But I mean, flooded with directives. Whether or not it will come to pass, I don't know. But this ancient flood of directive started coming at me. And it has to do with production and doing and finding a way and a path to create something in the world, perhaps something new in the world that brings you into a place of aliveness that is remarkable. And having not written for 10 years, not that I've forgotten it, because I do this class and there is a lot of, for me, flood of inspiration. But the idea of writing and having been told to write a movie that saves the world, whatever that is, and those of you who don't know what I'm talking about can listen to last week's talk. It's a very strange moment in my life. But then, of course, I'm looking at that strangeness in everybody's life. And somehow the universe is bringing people to my door, and we're having dialogues and talks, not like it's the last night of the world, but we are really in a time of transformational change bigger than we may have ever known. And we are in this inspired or terrified, whatever we turn out to be, having a system that's able to open to and adapt to this incredible energy that's coming in to basically push us to be creative, or finding a way to hide from it and going, "I don't know what to do and I don't know how to do it." But among the many things that happened this week, and forgive me, I said this would be rambling, um, I had to speak at a funeral of a dear friend and student, and many of you may know her, Jackie Parker, and her long-term partner, Dan, who passed away this last week. And he had been diagnosed with cancer about 2 months ago for the first time, and they thought they got it, and then they didn't. And then he was on death's door and died. And I was asked to speak at the funeral. Um, and I've known Dan as a student, and we've had conversations, but Dan would come into my house very quiet. He's a very quiet guy. And I would sit and do our class meditation with him. And the way I knew him best was through imaging, seeing him, looking into his heart and soul. And he was kind of shy, but he would open. And I could see, and I talk about radiance, he would kind of flicker and he would start to bubble up. And I would see this light coming out of him that was so like, wow. And as a person day to day, he wasn't in my experience like that. But what he would do, because he was a composer and a pianist, he would come in my house and play at this piano right behind where I'm sitting. And he'd say, your piano's flat. I would get my piano tuned so he could come and play his music when he came to class. And it was like, I was so grateful I did it, and it was beautiful. But I had to talk about him, and I was asked to be the first speaker. And he had asked that before he died. And I was told we have 5 minutes. Well, you know me, guys. 5 minutes is not a huge long time for me to talk. So I had to kind of bring it into focus. And the thing I talked about was it's very simple. It was I was a writer, a screenwriter, and almost every one of my movies was about death and dying. And that it opened your eyes to an inevitability of the human experience, which was really crucial. And um, and I talked about how we move toward this in this journey toward light, and how I got to know him through the light inside and not the story, because I didn't know his story well at all. And and I just started talking about how there's this line in the one film I wrote, Ghost, that in a way impacts the journey. And it says, the love inside, you take it with you. That line was really important, and it became important to Dan. And then I sat there after being the first person to talk and listened to 17 people share their stories with Dan since he was a little boy, share their stories of Dan. And I was so moved by meeting somebody through story. But I will tell you, with all the story and people crying and talking, and they were lovely stories, and it filled in so many gaps, nothing introduced me to or helped me know him better than sitting in this class with him. An eye-open connection, this knowing of another human being direct. He knew that, and I knew that. We were able to bond. It was stunningly beautiful. Um, the rest of the week, strangely, was populated with visitors. And we had two groups over for lunch. And in their visits, there were stories, of course, about struggles in the human journey, getting work, knowing how to pay the bills, how things are going to go forward, difficulties that are day-to-day existence. And so I'm hearing the stories, and I'm looking at the person and the people telling them. And all I'm seeing is, one, the human struggle, but two, the beauty of these people talking to me. I mean, beauty. It's what I see when I look at you guys, and you may or may not know that. But these people were talking to me about the difficulty and the problem, but they were emitting a kind of light of being that was so affirming, and they didn't know how much light they represented. They didn't know it, but that's who they were. The struggles were part of the production of the light of their soul. And you like to think that because you are, if you will, a meditator and moving toward light, and you're going to try to, be an emanator and try to be someone who can feel this rising energy inside you, that you will somehow maybe be transformed by it. But these people were struggling, and yet they were emanations of something so beautiful. And the love that was being shared at lunch was so stunning. And the work that went into making the lunch with Blanche, I mean, and me, but the preparation for entertainment and giving and sharing was so beautiful. And the experience of sharing and being with other people and seeing them in a way that they often don't see themselves, and then trying to reflect that back, was so wonderful. It was just wonderful. And all I can tell you is I look at so many people who do not know that their lives are touched and blessed. And I luckily get to see it and I can sometimes shine it back. For the last few days, uh, Blanche and I we're going through spring, of course. So there's this unbelievable joy in the green appearing in our lives. The fish have returned. The birds are coming in droves. And it's really beautiful. And Blanche and I are walking to Contentment Lane every day, rain or shine, the road up the hill. And it's been unbelievably sweet and beautiful. At the same time, we had an invasion of carpenter ants, and they're big and they are unbelievable. And you want to say, but I'm a holy person. I'm a spiritual person. Why do I have carpenter ants coming into my house? And the first ones I took them outside, and so I didn't want to kill them. By the 30th, I was killing them with glee. I couldn't get rid of enough carpenter ants. I flushed them down the toilet. I did everything. I was so annoyed with them. And then I realized maybe if I close all the radiators, and which meant bending down using a what do you call it, a screwdriver to close it because I couldn't do it by hand, and I stopped pretty much the invasion, which was like wow. And I also called Orkin to come next week. But you think if you're a good person and a spiritual person and you're trying to live your life accordingly, you will not have carpenter ants. And then last night in the bedroom, in the middle of the night, a rat was making noise in the wall again. I thought we got rid of all the rats. So if you're on this journey right now to have a spiritual life to free you of carpenter ants and rats, sorry, sign out now, because the journey of a spiritual life is to wake up in the middle of the night and hear a rat and feel wildly alive, alive. And when I'm killing these stupid carpenter ants and doing terrible things to kill them, really, I'm feeling, you know, this is what you do. This is what you do. Rudy told me this. One of the times I was in his store and there was something on the floor and I thought I should go pick it up. He said, "Kill it." I said, Rudy, he's a bug. He's alive. He's not, you don't kill a bug. He said, "You're a human being. Kill it." And I stomped on it. And it was one of the great teachings from Rudy. So here we are. Life is just circulating around. All this stuff is going on. The world is going through weirdness, as you all know. Every one of us is impacted by the weirdness, and it's not going to be different. We are in a new time and a new era, whether you like it or not. Our parents or your grandparents lived through things like this. Now it's our turn. We are going to be going through something phenomenal. I think we're all kind of sharing it. And this dream of the last night of the world may not be the exact depiction of what we're talking about, but we are in some transitional moment that is big. So to switch subjects, but not, because this is how life works. Uh, I have two sons. My son Ari, my youngest, lives in Washington, D.C. I've spoken to him about him quite a bit because he is in the Justice Department. He's a assistant attorney, U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C. An amazing achievement for somebody who had wanted to be a screenwriter and who may now find he has stories to tell. But that really is a big step for him as a human being, and he's doing his work and he's living up to it despite two bike accidents and a broken thigh and a broken collarbone. He's really, really pushing through. And his wife, Burju, who has a green card, and I get worried about how she's going to function in the world we're in right now, but she's one of the most beautiful, loving human beings ever. And they are thriving in their own way with demand in Washington, D.C., because the Justice Department has been so vacated in many ways that the people left have to work twice as hard. It's one of my sons. The other one is my son Joshua, my eldest. And he asked me the other day to talk to all of you about his new project. And I went, that's not what I do in this class. This is not a moment to sell projects. I don't know if I can do that. But I couldn't not do it. And it's somehow fitting in with this entire strange week that I want to sit here for a moment and sell one of my son's projects. Now, my son Josh is a video game writer and uh, what's it called? I knew this would happen. Virtual reality creator, and and working on amazing things. I mean, he's won awards for Assassin's Creed 2, for Destiny. He has all these really huge video games, and he's now doing something called Black Mirror as a which, as a virtual reality game, and also the movie Dune, which is, I mean, like spectacular stuff. But in the meantime, he has been working on something for years out of this inspiration, a driving inspiration. He's wanted to create a collection of comic books and possibly a whole new litany of avenue of comic books. And in some ways, he may be pulling it off because he's quite amazingly brilliant and talented. And what he may be launching, and this is why I'm talking about it, is, in my mind, of course, parental pride, but maybe the new Marvel comic sort of universe. So I said I would share what he's doing, and I'm going to do that right now. And this is him. I'll have to go back to see if I'm getting it on the screen. Hold on. This is Josh in his 50s now. His comic book is called, you can see it right in the top, Time Sensitive. That's a launching. He's launching it at a big comic book convention this weekend. And it's part of a new company called Strangeland Comics. That's one of the images for Strangeland Comics. And another image for Strangeland Comics. And he is in the process of doing a Kickstarter campaign for it, which I think is really uh, brilliant. And I don't know where it will go. And any one of you who wants to join a company that could become the next Marvel Comics is welcome to join the Kickstarter campaign. But more importantly, there will come a point shortly where this will be released to the public, and you can buy a comic. And Arkady agreed to said we can put it on the YouTube listing for the talk this week, and you can actually get a link to his company and where that will go. And Forbes magazine just did a whole review about him and his company, so it's not like non-existent; it's actually happening. So I'm sharing this with you for a lot of reasons. One of them is the spiritual journey is not just about transcendence. The spiritual journey is not just about get me out of suffering. It's not just about touch me so I can feel my heart and feel love and joy in me. The spiritual journey is about being alive. And being alive incorporates all of these things, like talking at a funeral, um, giving interviews for me, writing, finding inspiration. My friend Larry, one of my oldest friends from high school, called me the other day and he said, and he's 83, and he just finished his novel, the first novel. He said, I just realized what I want to do with the rest of my life. I want to be a writer. Well, he just finished a novel, but he just realized that's what he wants to do. And with an enthusiasm that, like my son Josh, they are thrilled with this idea of entering the world, being part of the world. It doesn't matter what age you are, it doesn't matter where you come from. The excitement and the journey and the stimulation of filling life, bringing material to life, dialoguing with the world is so wonderful. And we can all do that. And you can do it at the lunch table with your friends coming over and just talking and having this incredible sense of being with a true human being, a true human being. And these people don't always know how amazing they are. But if you look at them through the right eyes, and all of you guys have that potential vision, you can let people see themselves as you see them. You can let people see that they are luminous, that they are sweet, kind people, and that they've had these lives, however they've manifested with success or failure or whatever, they are so dynamic. And if you have carpenter ants in your house and rats and all that other stuff, and the car's not working and whatever's going on in your life, it doesn't mean you're not spiritual. It doesn't mean you're not connected to the totality. What it means is you are connected to the totality because carpenter ants go into everybody's, not maybe not yours, but many people's lives. So do all sorts of things. Troubles come, things you don't always succeed. Life does not always give you the best of what you're looking for. But if you develop this inner vision of being able to see deep into yourself and realizing that what you're seeing is at the center of everybody else you're looking at, and you can look at them and start to see beneath the surface, even what they don't see, and you can begin to spread that in some way. And if you can begin to help them in any way, whatever that may be, invite them to lunch, try to help them with their work, whatever that may be, what you find is this extraordinary feeling of being alive, just being alive. And that's what it is. And it's not about transcendence. It's not about going to heaven or not going to hell. It's not about perfection. It's not about finding the space of no suffering. It's finding this, finding this. And I cannot tell you the moments I've had this week, and that's not new. I mean, it's not like the only time I've had it, but this week has been a wonderful version of it. Is being alive is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing, period. If you can bring depth and transcendence into the equation, it's even more wonderful. It's amazing. Does it hurt sometimes? I just went to the hip doctor to see if I needed an operation on my hips because I can barely walk. And he said, nope, you got bursitis and tendonitis, and there are other things you can do about it. I went, wow. And I told him I put an elevator in my house. He said, use it. Which I permission to actually go up and down so I don't have to walk up and down the stairs every time because they really hurts my legs. And I thought, that's very nice of him. I can do that. I can actually take advantage of the ease that I have built into my structure. Not all of us can put elevators in our houses. I know there's certain hierarchies and things that I've been allowed that have been very precious. But all I can tell you, I ride my elevator. I know it could get stuck at any moment and I could be trapped for weeks. But I also know I'm going upstairs without having to climb those stairs again. And if I had to run downstairs to get pickle relish, I don't have to go down the stairs and up the stairs to go to the pantry. I can just take the elevator down and take the elevator up. It is amazing. Life is amazing. And that's the message for today. It is amazing. Um, I think I've told this story. I don't know if you guys know it, but when I worked at the World's Fair as a kid at NYU as a student, and I worked there, and there was a pavilion called the Johnson's Wax Pavilion, and they had a movie that they were showing. Francis Thompson was, I think, the creator of it, and he made this movie that you sit downstairs and then you would lift it up into this big eggshell of a space, and three screens come on, and it's the day in a life of people all around the world. So you see people in Japan and China, in America, all going through the day, and all they're doing is having breakfast, going to school, having lunch, da da da, da going to bed at night. I would watch this at lunchtime at the World's Fair, and at the end of the production, I was sobbing. And I would go back to work and sell hot dogs and beer. And then the next day, I would go watch it again and again. Okay, 15 years later, I'm working for him, the director and writer of that film. And I'm expressing how much I love his work. And he says, go come. And he has a whole three screen setup in his office. And he gives me a private screening of this film, To Be Alive. And I go, how did I get to this moment? How did this happen? For my 70th birthday, my son Josh takes me on an airplane to Minneapolis, I believe it was, and we get in a car. I don't know why. He's not telling me. And we drive up to the Johnson's Wax Company. And there, that pavilion that was at the World's Fair has been reconstructed completely. And we drive in, and I'm seeing it. I'm going, oh my God. And they open the doors, and there's a private screening for me of To Be Alive, which ends with the words, To be alive is a wonderful thing. And I'm sitting there sobbing with my son, with the gift of this moment and the amazement of how did this thing come around? How did all of this happen? I don't know how all this happens. And I know it doesn't always happen. I know. But if you have a moment where alignments take place, there is this thing in you that goes, it truly is an amazing thing to be alive. And again, carpenter ants, rats, and God knows what else. But did I already say the fish have come back? I mean, it's an amazing, amazing life. I know dark things are gathering, storm clouds are happening outside our windows and in our lives. We can engage them or not engage them. We can figure out what we have to do. Um, Sorry, I'm rambling, but I'll tell you one other quick story. When I came back from India as a kid, after traveling around looking for, a teacher and trying to find my path and understand the nature of mystical life, I arrived back in San Francisco, and there was a concert, the San Francisco Orchestra, and all of my friends who lived in San Francisco, and I went to this concert outside, and they were playing Mussorgsky's pictures at an exhibition, and it transported me into some other space. And it's one of the great musical pieces for me. Lots of stories behind that piece of music, but it meant I had returned triumphantly, if you will, from a journey around the world looking for a teacher that I didn't find, with an understanding in a Tokyo record store, thanks to Gracie Slick and Surrealistic Pillow, um, that I needed someone to love. And a week later, I found Blanche. Here we are. It's 56 or 7 years later. I'm in the best marriage imaginable. There's all these stories. You can read the book if you want to read the book. But all I can tell you is it is exquisite. Blanche and I are getting old. Life is harder right now. But the other day, I discovered they were doing a concert of Mussorgsky's pictures at an exhibition. And it was at 5 in the afternoon. Blanche and I don't go out at 5 in the afternoon. But I said, Blanche, let's go out. And she said, yeah. And we got in the car and we drove to Bard College where they were doing it. And we sat there for a lecture that went on way too long about all the elements that went into making that extraordinary piece of music. And then they just played the whole symphony. And circles came together. You know, the beauty of it is so phenomenal. It's so exquisite. But the great thing was we didn't just stay home and follow our normal day-to-day life. We broke the pattern. And then we went out to dinner at the restaurant for us that's normally closed on a Monday night. This was Monday at 5 o'clock. And so at 7 o'clock, this restaurant was open, and it's one of the best restaurants in town. And they have this unbelievable dish, branzino fish. And we sat there just gazing at each other and just going, the big deal was we broke the pattern of the day and we had the right to change it up. We don't have to follow things the way they're written. I can take the elevator instead of the stairs. We can go out to dinner anytime we want. We have a life of choice. We have a life of dynamic where if you're caught up in your own drama, break it, break it, change the pattern, change what you do, find another way to get through the day, surprise yourself. And life suddenly, I'm telling you, to be alive is a wonderful thing. The end. And if you want to buy my son's comic book, which is beautiful, by the way, really stunning. And if you want to invest in his company, or you want to just go to a concert or go out to dinner, God bless. Any comments, questions, concerns? Yeah, I know I've gone on and on. Okay. Um, well, thank you for indulging this. And I know any of you who decide I can't handle this anymore, it's fine. I am looking to release myself from the weekly demands. On the other hand, I haven't been given permission to do that. So that's not going to happen. Anyway, at least not for now. Thank you. Love you all. And next week, who knows?